So we have another Mengarini Sicilian. I mean, I love this variation against the Sicilian. If my opponent plays knight c6 or e6, then we can go for the gambit line with b4. Those are the most common moves. He does go e6. Okay, yeah, I've actually had this in, I think I've had it in one over-the-board classical game in my life, and I actually made a YouTube video on that game, and I actually misplayed the opening a bit, but my opponent blundered a queen, which is nuts for a classical game, because he was rated like 2000. That was pretty funny. Anyway, so the whole point of this is that we sacrifice our A and B pawns for black's C pawn, so we are down one pawn, but we get a massive centre with C3, D4, and E4. And if black tries to strike back with D5, which he does, I believe that's considered an inaccuracy, even though it's like the most obvious looking move in the position, because we get to play E5, and this kind of pawn structure, I don't know if it has a name necessarily, but it's one that I play in loads of openings. The Vienna, for example, often has a similar-ish pawn structure, except the E pawn is normally over on the C file, like on C5, let's say. And this causes problems for black, because we're going to immediately play queen g4 and target g7, and black can't play the standard knight f6, queen g7, rook to g8 sort of thing, where the knight protects the rook and h7, and the rook attacks the queen, and black gets good counterplay for the cost of one pawn, because there is no knight f6, because we control that square. Back on move 5, when black played bishop to e7, I believe the best move is actually bishop to f8. Like, just preemptively defending g7. That's how big of a problem it is. But, of course, that looks ridiculous to put the bishop back on f8. Although, I mean, I have seen it, but very rarely. So, g6 is clearly a weakness that we can target with moves like h4, h5 in the future. But for the time being, I think we can just play knight to f3, something like bishop to d3. A lot of people like to play h5. Yeah, my opponent goes f5. That's very common to like lash out with one of these pawns to try to get my queen out and take a little bit of space. I don't think taking is very good. We encourage moves like e5 with tempo and knight to f6 with tempo, and we lose our very strong e pawn. So I just like to drop the queen back to g3 and basically say, okay, you've blocked up the king side for the time being. Like, all this, like, these pawns are, like, completely locked up. There's no clear pawn breaks for the time being. So, you can count that as a win if you'd like. But you still have the problem of a distinct lack of space. That's not going anywhere. A6 is an interesting move. I don't really know what that achieves. I will happily play h4 and ask you what you are going to do about the move h5. And now you can't play h5 yourself, which you would normally play to stop h4, h5, because your g6 pawn is hanging because you played f5. And this is kind of the issue with this setup for black, is that a lot of the moves that my opponent is playing look very natural. They look very reasonable, right? And on the surface level, it's like, okay, white has a little bit more space with this e5 pawn, but I mean, black has his bishops patrolling quite nicely. He can get the rest of his pieces out, maybe even castle queenside if he absolutely needs to. But one of the things I really like about this system, which, again, called the Mengarini Sicilian, I initially learned it years ago from a Gothamchess course and have adapted it over time to suit my playstyle a little bit better. So I do some of what Gotham recommended in some my own sort of lines. One of the things I really like about this system is if black tries to castle kingside or queenside, there are going to be problems either side, because on the king side we have our queen here, our knight here, our bishop lined up. Sometimes the bishop comes to d3, but with the pawn on f5 it's less appetizing, and we obviously have pawn to h5 on the way, which I don't really see a reason not to play. This seems like a really big problem for black, and you can't really play g5 either, because that's just a free pawn, because we're attacking that 3 times and it's defended twice. And if black castles queenside, then there's an open a file. Like, we have sacrifices on a6. Whoa, sorry about that. I'm sure we have sacrifices on a6, for example. So g5 keeps the h-file shut, because allowing this would be pretty devastating, because of course if we have take, that's all really bad. But now, of course, we will be taking on g5. But we have to decide what we should take it with. Obviously, we can't take with the queen, so should we take with the knight or the bishop? Well, to me, it feels like it makes more sense to take with the bishop on first glance. Although taking with the knight, I don't know. Knight takes, let's say knight h6. Well, then we have knight takes e6, and if bishop takes, then bishop h6. Because I suppose if bishop takes, knight takes, then you can play knight h6 and get away with it. So I think knight takes makes more sense. So 13 moves in, we have won back our pawn. Fantastic. We are still stopping black from developing properly, because like I said, if knight h6, I think we can just play knight takes e6. Okay. Hold on, can we play this? Can we play knight e6? In this type of position, you should really be looking for tactics. I'm sure a move like knight to f3 is fine. I expect a move like king to f8 to stop queen g7. But what if we take on e6? So let's say bishop takes, queen g7. How do you defend the rook? How do you defend the rook? If bishop f6, then I mean I just take it. Pretty self-explanatory. Queen takes defends the rook. I could trade queens and be up. Am I up anything? Maybe not. So after queen takes, I can take on b7 though, with an attack on the knight and the rook. That looks completely winning. I think this works. Let's play it. Knight takes e6 and queen g7. This rook is just completely stranded. Now, the reason that I'm not giving this check first is because, one, king d7 might actually be viable, defending the bishop and giving more back rank defense, although the knight would probably have to sacrifice itself. And two, if queen g6 check, bishop f7, queen g7, then after something like bishop 2, f6, take, and queen takes, we don't have access to b7 anymore because the bishop is blocking on f7. So I think it's more accurate to go straight to g7 rather than giving a check on g6. That was the first thing that I'd calculated is, oh, should we give the check? But I don't think so. This is also quite a funny position because we are down a knight for a pawn, and we also only have our queen developed. None of our other pieces are developed, which is really funny. Okay, queen d7. Preparing to castle queenside, I assume. Well, I mean, I don't see a reason not to take the rook. And then we probably have to come back to avoid getting trapped. Do we? Yeah, I think we do. We could consider queen to h7 or queen g7. I'm going to say queen g7, though. Just because we have more of a way out. And we're still keeping pressure on h6, on the 7th rank. And now we are up an exchange? We're up an exchange and a pawn. So effectively, we just have to get our pieces out and get developed now. Now, one of the good things is, although we're so far behind in development, obviously we're up material, but also our pawn structure in the center, there's no good way for black to break through it and actually access our king. He's certainly going to try, though. And that's a really cool move, because the point is, if we take, then bishop to b4 check with a discovered attack on our queen, and he would win our queen. He's also threatening knight to c2 check, so we definitely have to be careful. My first instinct is to play bishop to d3, to just guard and prepare to castle. Definitely a move. I don't know if there's anything better than that. It's a nice find. It's a nice find. Well, we have to stop knight c2 check. And we should also get prepared to castle. If knight 2 b3, though, bishop d3, knight b3, with a fork, that's difficult to deal with. Yeah, I didn't realize knight d4 was quite this strong. Let's think. What about rook a2? Guarding this and ensuring knight b3 doesn't come with tempo on the rook. We are maybe opening this up in the future, is my only gripe. But I'm not sure if we can afford to be picky. Let's say rook a2. Knight back to c6. I mean, we could always play a move like rook b2 if we need to. Or even meet d4 with c4. Yeah, that's viable. That's viable. So I think rook a2 is probably forced. I don't see a better option. So let's play it. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, that's a really nice move from my opponent. Again, we are suffering from our lack of development, absolutely. But I still think going after the rook was the way to go. I kind of didn't realize the potential for black to just go queen d7 and castle queenside and kind of just let me go take the rook. Definitely a good practical choice from my opponent. And by the way, we are not threatening to take this knight still because bishop to b4 check is still a problem. But the point is this bishop has to move with check, otherwise I'll take the queen with check and trade queens. Okay, knight b3. Interesting. Interesting. So what about bishop a3? Just offering a bishop trade. And if take, I of course take. Now if I take his bishop, he'll take back with the knight, which just helps his development. So I maybe shouldn't do that. If bishop e3, we just get hit with d4. Although this doesn't come with an attack on the rook, but it's still a very frustrating x-ray to deal with. Although I suppose we can maybe swing the rook to c2 with check in those lines. It's interesting. We've got to save the bishop, though. So we have to move the bishop. That has to be done. Now, I'm kind of thinking bishop to f4 is nice. Just making sure e5 is nicely defended. And if d4, c4... If he allows bishop to d3, then we're chilling. So I expect him to go d3, but then just, I don't know. Oh, wait, no, we can't go c4 because of bishop to b4 check. Yeah, okay. Can't go d4. That's difficult then. So maybe bishop a3 is the way to go. The reason I'm taking so long on these moves, because I think these moves are the make or break. I need to just survive, get castled, and then I'll be okay. But if I take a wrong turn, I could be lost here. If here, queen a4... Take... No, that's no good. Queen a4 is a bit of a problem. Or is it? Is it, though? It feels like a problem. Okay, bishop e3, d4. Take. If knight takes... Well, no, if take, bishop b4 check. Okay, what about bishop h6? d4. Still doesn't feel right. Maybe bishop b2? d4? No, because then he's going to take with tempo. What about bishop d2, d4? Because then I can play c4, because this doesn't come with check. So I'm thinking bishop d2 is the way to go. It looks like it ticks all the boxes. And I also can't spend all of my remaining time. Okay, I'm confused. Why would you trade? One thing I'm very happy about is that this queen has no good infiltration squares, because I'm covering b5 and a4. He's just traded off his most active piece. That's really confusing. I wasn't threatening the knight in any way. And he's just helping me develop. My knight had nowhere good to develop to, because I obviously can't go to c3 because it's occupied. I couldn't go to d2 because it's occupied. And if I went to a3, I was concerned about queen a4. Or even if I go to a3, then just knight d2, and if I take with the rook, then my knight hangs because my rook's overloaded. Yeah, but can't I just go queen g3? I'm confused. Wait, if queen g3, d4, if I take, then queen c1, and I'm in a lot of trouble. So if here, I could push. Bishop b4, bishop d3. Wait, I could go queen to b3. Ooh, that's nice. I like that. I really like that. If queen b6... Queen b6... With the threat being bishop takes d2 check, and then my queen hangs. Rook b2, bishop takes d2, king takes d2. There's no queen f2. I'm threatening b7. Let's say queen back to c6. Don't know, maybe that's playable. d4 is going to come with tempo on my rook, though. But no, I have c4. That's okay. I have c4. I have c4. So maybe just getting my queen out of there is a good way to go. I think this is the best idea. If f4... Don't know. Oh, also, maybe I should have considered bishop d3. With the idea being if queen takes c3, then rook to c2 pins the queen to the king. Maybe I should have considered that. But I still think queen g3 is quite solid. Again, d4, c4, bishop b4. Maybe I can just play bishop d3. Thinking about it. Knight e7, castles, rook g8. Yeah, no, no. I just have f4 though. That's a very silly move, isn't it? I just go f4 and then black loses. Yeah, see, this is the thing. Black is down material and he has a limited window of opportunity to exploit the fact that my development is bad. I think he has now used up that window of opportunity with this one tempo waste. I mean, maybe he's trying to open up this diagonal. Maybe that's the point. I don't know if I'm convinced, though. This looks very tempting. I mean, for the time being, I still get hit with c4. And if I play this, then I assume rook takes. And if I take, then take. And that's no good. But, I mean, surely there's other options like rook b2. So I can just do this. Still, I could even just go bishop to e2, preparing to castle kingside. Let's say bishop c5, stopping me from castling kingside. Don't know. It's still not easy. Still not easy. I would love to play this, but yeah, this happens. So maybe I should just go rook to b2 with queen a4. I don't think that's concerning. because this is met with this. So just bishop d3, probably. I think this makes a lot of sense. Let's play it. If rook to a3... Sorry, bishop to a3. I assume rook b1 is fine. Yeah, my queen is defending c3, which is pretty crucial. To be fair, now my pawn's on f4, I could consider rook h3. Like, if I can't castle kingside, because this diagonal becomes too weak, and he plays a move like bishop c5, and I can't get rid of the bishop, and I can't blockade for some reason, which is my current plan. I want to get a knight to d4 to blockade the diagonal, and then castle. If for some reason I can't do that, then I can probably just play rook to h3 to get the rook involved here. And because my pawn is now on f4, there's no pawn to f5 with tempo on the rook, which is why I didn't play it in this position, because I thought that f4 was a bit problematic, because my rook has no good squares, really. Yeah, but now I just go rook b1. Obviously, I'm not going to repeat. That seems unnecessary, because I should be winning this position up an exchange. So just rook b1. Also, now, if d4, then c4 comes with tempo on the bishop, which is a good bonus. And also, with my rook on the b file, rather than on the a file, so it's been on the a file, right? Now it's on the b file. If d4, c4, there's never bishop to b4 with pins and potential a5s to support the bishop, because I already control b4. So I think we had a winning position the whole time. I'd like to think. But I do also think that there were potentially better ways for my opponent to try to have tried to exploit it. Okay, knight to e7, preparing moves like rook to g8. Makes sense. Now, okay, I've got a couple of considerations. One being knight b3, trying to go knight to d4. The other being bishop to e2, just trying to castle. The other being pawn to c4, trying to go after the bishop. If c4, bishop c5, I'm not happy about that, though, because I don't want to open up the center. I want to meet him trying to open up the center with me shutting the center, not opening it up for him with pawn c4 while the pawn is still on d5. I'm trying to play pawn c4 in response to d4 to keep the center shut. So let's not jump the gun. Also, this is not concerning because my bishop defends g2. Aside from the fact that queen f3 would defend both anyway. This knight has no good way of getting into the game. Again, if d4 then c4 and you can't play knight d5 regardless, you can't come to f5 or g6. And if you come to c6, the queen needs to move first. So that sounds all good to me. So what's wrong with knight to b3? Maybe queen to b6, pinning the knight to the rook. That's kind of annoying. Kind of annoying, for sure, for sure. So what about bishop e2? Just preparing to castle? Perhaps? Here. Well, I can just go bishop d3, defending the rook, though. And then I'm preparing moves like knight d4, and I don't really see how you stop it. I can't play bishop d3 right now, because then I lose control over c3, and queen c3 is quite concerning. Because my bishop can't move with check to pick up the queen. Because if I come here, this bishop's in the way, and if I come here, this pawn's in the way. So I think knight b3 is what I'm going to go for. Because if I get knight to d4, I should be good. I hope all of this is easy to follow, by the way. If this is your first time on the channel and you don't know, I will analyze the game afterwards as well. Obviously, it won't take quite as long as the game itself takes to play because it's a 15-minute game. But the analysis will be very useful because we'll be able to have the engine to help us out and see where we did good things and where we did bad things. So like I said, queen b6, bishop d3 looks fine. And importantly, the queen has no entry spots on any part of this diagonal. Everything is defended very nicely, which makes it easier. We're also stopping bishop to c5 at any point because we will just take it, maybe. Or to be fair, if bishop c5 right now, I mean, not only is there knight to a5 with potentially devastating forks because the pawns just collapse, but also I could just play knight to d4 anyway. If bishop c5, then if take, then the center is locked. I can get castled, and we should be good to go. So it's a very interesting position. Very interesting. If pawn d4, I think we can just take it. I don't think we have to mess around with c4, not to mention the fact that that would just lose a pawn in this position, and we don't have rook c1 because the bishop controls that square, whereas the knight was previously defending c4, which allowed us to play c4, but now, if pawn d4, we can just take it. Hit the queen, hit the bishop. If you sack the rook, nothing works. You can't come to c3 with check, we cover that. You can't play b4 with check, I cover that. And if you try bishop to b4 check, rook takes b4, and queen to c1, I can just run away. So knight d4. I'm sure knight to a5 is okay, but I think this is far easier. Far easier. This bishop has no way into the game. The knight has no way into the game. Rook g8 does very little. Yeah, I mean, you can play that, but what are you doing about queen b3? That's my question. Or even this. Even this is fine. Oh no, then you have check. But then I mean just king e2, and rook c1 is on the way. But I think it's probably easier to just play a move like queen d3. Thinking about it. There's no checks. Queen b3 is fine, but there is queen e4 check. And I mean, I should be winning completely, but this is just more simple, I think. And at this point, we are up in exchange. We have a protected past e-pawn. Maybe these pawns... Maybe my opponent will trade queens and try to claim that the A and B pawns can be strong. I can't believe that they will be of any real... cause any real problems, realistically. Okay, yeah, he doesn't go for it. Well, I mean, just bishop e2 in castles looks fine to me. We could give a check. Not sure what it achieves, though. Queen b3 might be quite nice, actually. Trying to force the queen trade. If you give a check, then queen to b4. And again, we try and force the queen trade. I think I like that. And if you take on d4, then I mate you on b7. So I think this is quite nice. Also, my other rook can lift up to h3 to get into the game. So we don't have to necessarily develop in castle or develop and play king d2 or king f2. We could just play rook h3 to get the rook involved if we want. So that's also a nice bonus. He does trade queens. Okay, cool. So I expect b5, because otherwise I'll play rook to b6 with problems on the 6th rank. Oh, you are... Yeah, you can attack that. It's a good shout, actually. If I pin, then he just moves the king, so that's no good. I don't think. Wait, no, if I... This... Take... Bishop back? This isn't as simple as I would have liked. So g4 take and f5 ideas could be strong in the future, but not just yet. This just feels super passive. I just don't want to play it. b5. King d2. Well, I can get my king to e3, though. And once my king's on e3, I should be okay. I don't know, maybe this is annoying, though. Here. Or even king d7, actually. Because then I don't have bishop takes a6 ideas. Then I'm going to have to defend it regardless. If I come here and here, then I can move with check, so that's okay. I think I just have to go for this. As much as I hate that move, I need to give myself time to bring my king, I think. but I don't see these pawns getting too far. I think it's difficult for black to actually use his pieces to assist. If knight to a5, trying to come into c4, I also don't think that's concerning. Like, I don't know, knight a5, I could give a check if I want. I could just play king to d2 and knight c4, king c3. Trying to come into b4 is interesting. Although maybe I wouldn't go for that because I'm blocking my rook. The knight on c4 does stop king e3 though, but I can just take it with the bishop, potentially. Okay, a5, interesting. Okay. King d2. If b5, then I think rook to c3 is a problem for black, because that is a double attack, and you can't move the knight to defend the pawn because of the pin. So if a4... I don't know, we could just attack it, and you actually can't defend, because if b5 we take. So we could just trade the d pawn for the a pawn. So I don't think either of the pawns can move for the time being. If here... Well, then we have bishop b5, because the a pawn no longer defends. But if king b8, we don't have bishop takes a6, because the pawn is on a5 now. Again, we do have to try to be accurate. We are, again, up in exchange, but, you know, if we fall victim to a knight fork or something, that, you know, is irrelevant if we're up in exchange, because that could go sideways. Okay. Well, g3 looks completely fine. What else can we play? I don't really see a problem with g3, to be honest. We could play rook c3, but again, just king b8. Oh my god, I can't draw arrows. King b8 looks fine. So let's just go g3. And I think probably bishop to e2. And then bring this rook over. Something like that. I can't play king e3 anymore to defend d4 because then I would be hanging the g3 pawn. But I also couldn't play it even if the pawn wasn't on g3 because I would allow rook g3 to kick my king away regardless. So it's not easy. But I think, to be honest, if my rook just stays here, guarding d4 and g3, then that's a worthy use of the rook, because I'm keeping his knight and his rook out of my position. So hopefully my bishop and my other rook can go and do the attacking work. Also, I'm potentially freeing up my king to not have to be defending pawns and maybe get involved himself on a square like a4, for example. He could be quite strong, blockading the a and b pawns. That could be useful. It's unclear for black how this bishop gets back into the game. Okay, interesting. Now I can play this, but I suppose he can go back. I don't really want to play king f2, because the rook can zip between these files, whereas the king is slow to move. So I would just be giving my opponent time by doing that. So if like rook b5, b5, rook c3, b4, rook c5, that looks interesting. Oh, I really need to hurry up as well. Lol, didn't even realise. I want to play rook to b5 if my opponent lets me. I think. Because if bishop d7 I can take. And if the knight moves I can play this. Again, I've got to be aware of knight b4 in all these positions. But I'm not too concerned right now. I can just give a check. And continue with my life. But I am very low on time. And then I can play a move like bishop to b5 to blockade the pawn, for example. And I should be chilling, relatively speaking. Okay, let's do this. This can't be played because of the pin. I'm threatening this. That's a king b6. Well, then you hang b5. Yeah, so he does this. Then I was wanting to play rook c5 to prepare this. You still can't take, of course. If king b6... check? That has to be the move. Because then I force a rook trade. Right? I could even consider rook c1. But I think this is perfectly reasonable. Maybe rook c1 was the way to go. I don't know. I don't think we should dwell on it. Because now we get king e3, defending, preparing bishop to b5. King b6. I think bishop to a4 is really nice. And I'm basically just biding my time to play g4. Because I just want to make sure these pawns can't move. I don't necessarily have to win them. I just have to make sure they can't do anything. And then I can go with my own kingside push. Because I, of course, have a majority on the king side. Only of one pawn. Wait. Sorry, of 2 pawns I have a majority. What are you doing about this? Where's that knight going? If bishop to e8, g4 looks pretty killer. Or even bishop e8, and I can take, maybe, but I don't think it's necessary because my bishop is such a good blockader. Stops a5 and also stops b3. Sorry, a4 and also b3. Yeah, now the knight's completely out the game. Here, here, here. Here, here. I could even consider bringing the king over. Oh, no, sorry, he's going to take that. Nah, let's just push. Let's just push. He can't survive two connected passed pawns. You know, he can nab 2 pawns for the cost of it, but I don't think he can survive this. Also, rook h1 looks winning. Completely winning. Because I'm going to win h6. And the king is going to have to go back to the 7th rank, which means these pawns are never, ever going to move, because the king isn't going to be able to come forward to support them. And I'm only going to be down 1 pawn then. I can probably just win g4 if I really want, but more importantly, I'm just going to play something like this. Or actually, no, this is really bad, because if the knight blocks, I take, and if the king moves to the 7th rank, then I just play rook to h7, I win the bishop, game over. Game over. I think this was a really nice endgame. I mean, I know I was up in exchange, but the A and B pawns definitely posed a threat. It was not necessarily easy to deal with them. But I think we set up an excellent blockade with the bishop b5, bishop a4 maneuver. And executed the move g4 at the perfect time, I think. And yeah, my opponent resigns because he has no way of defending the bishop. So yeah. Very, very interesting game. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so it looks like there were a couple moments where we allowed black into the game, but he didn't find the ideas. 80.2% accuracy for us, 74.9% for my opponent. So certainly not perfect by any means, but the opening went very well. Getting the big center, d5 is not the best move, even though it looks very natural. Creating weaknesses, and by the way, king f8 is the best move here, which again feels very unnatural. F5 was a strange move. Taking en passant, watch the eval. Not a good move. Really not a good move, because black gets the castle, gets quick development, and gets back into the game. So queen g3 is the best. a6, h4, knight c6, h5, g5 is the only move, because the second best move is knight takes d4. Let's just put it that way. Let's put it that way. And the third best move is to sacrifice the knight on h6. So g5, because you have to keep the h-file shut. Knight g5 is the best. I was considering bishop g5, but it is slightly worse. Now, my reasoning was because of this. But the engine actually thinks that after bishop g5, black can play queen b6 and counterattack, which is interesting. And if knight takes, then why can't queen b6 be played? Because knight h7, and if take, then here. So after castle's queenside, we just go back, and we're up a pawn. And there's no queen to b2. So h6 from my opponent. Knight e6 is inaccurate, although it's fine. Knight h3 to come into f4 is better, though, which honestly I didn't consider. That does look really nice. But knight e6, bishop e6, queen g7, queen d7, taking is good. Castle queenside, and queen g7 is the mistake, because that allows knight d4. Okay, so I'm supposed to leave my queen there. Okay, so bishop e3, knight f6. I thought this was a problem. Apparently not. Queen h6, knight e4. And I'm just chilling. Yeah, you can't attack my queen on h6. I had not considered that. So queen g7 is a blunder because of knight d4, which is the only move. And obviously we can't take because of bishop b4. And check and discovered attack. So rook a2 is actually the only move, which I'm really glad that I found. My other consideration was bishop d3, which I rejected on the basis of knight b3. And here I actually have to just give up the exchange. And now material is equal, but I think it's clear black is probably better because he has better development. So rook a2 is the only move. Knight b3 is the best move. Bishop d2 is a mistake. Bishop a3 is better. Now, why did I reject this? I think on the basis of d4, which is the best move. Bishop e7, knight e7. And I couldn't figure out what to do from here. Because I was like, what if I take, then I'm just going to lose. Because everything opens up. And I don't know, I just can't survive this. So the way you have to go about this is queen h6. Oh, yeah, okay, okay. That's such a scumbag move. And we just don't care. And then rook h4 is the only move to stop this. Okay, I'm never finding that. I went bishop d2. Taking was a bad move from black, but apparently we had to take with the rook, not the knight. That's interesting. Yeah, d4 is definitely the way to go. And if c4, then d3. And this is the kind of thing I was calculating, and I was like, this looks really scary. So here we actually just have to play bishop to e2. But yeah, he took, and here rook takes is better, because I suppose d4 just doesn't do anything now. And also we get off of this. I think I was just like, well, now where do I put my knight? It can't go to a3, but it doesn't matter. Let's say f4, bishop d3. Black just has nothing. f3, take, king b8. These are the best moves, by the way. Rook g1, and we're just fine. But I took with the knight. Queen c6 is a miss. d4 is the way to go. Here I was going to play c4. Again, I thought he was going to go for this. And here I have rook to h3 to stay in the game. Bishop c4. And if take, then bishop b4, and I lose because of this again. Interesting. But he went queen c6. And queen g3, bishop d3 is actually better, which I saw afterwards because you can't do this because of this. I thought he could maybe just go king b8 though, but then I castle, and if take, then queen g6 counterattacking. Oh, yeah, right, okay, yeah, that makes sense. If this, then this, and if you move the bishop, then I just take. No, I take here. Oh, wow. And then I just have mates of some form. Okay. Well, bishop g5 from my opponent. f4. Kicking the bishop back. Rook b2. Queen f3 is slightly more accurate. I don't understand queen f3. Oh, right, right. Oh, that's quite nice. And if queen b6? Then bishop d3. Okay, whatever. I played rook b2. Bishop a3 is bad, rook b1 is best, knight e7, knight b3. Oh, wow, that's a mistake. I thought we could take. I completely missed that. I completely missed that. Ooh, that's rough. Wow, so knight b3 is wrong. Again, queen f3 is best, pinning the pawn to the queen. Wow. But bishop c5 is a miss because of knight d4, and now there's no queen to e4. Huh. But after take queen c2, queen d3, queen a4, queen b3, get the queen trade. And here, it's a matter of technique. The best move is rook g3, giving up the d-pawn, and then playing rook g6, counter-attacking, and then king f2. It makes sense. The engine goes for activity, but I thought rook d3 was the easiest option. a5, king d2, rook g8, g3. And, okay, this is not as good as rook c3, but why can't the king just move? Bishop g2, and if knight takes, then we counterattack. Okay, yeah, these are just things that I'm not going to see realistically. I thought this was very easy. Rook b1, b5, and I was really happy to find this combination. And then the check. Rook c1, oh no, that's not good because of this. Of course, yeah. So rook to b5, check. Forcing a rook trade. Oh no, sorry, here rook c1. Here rook c1 is the best. Because if take, and bishop to d7, e6 wins. Take, e7... and then I just sack the rook and promote. So rook takes b8 though, king b8, king e3. And I thought we would just keep this nice and simple. Blockade the pawns. If bishop to d7, then I can just go rook c1. Preparing e6, because if take, then take. So let's say bishop to e8, still e6. And the problem is the black pieces are completely tied down. And if a move like knight takes e5, because if take then take, I can just take. And if here, g4, and again, my two pawns just come crashing through. The bishop just can't do enough. And the king is cut off by my rook, and these pawns are just a bit too slow. So bishop f7 though, g4, oh sorry, rook c1 first, knight a7, which by the way just puts the knight completely out the game. g4, f5, rook h1. There's so many different ways to win here, but this I thought was the cleanest. And yeah, that's just game. Even if my opponent had put the bishop back on e8, I could have just taken it. The bishop had no good squares. And if you don't take on h5, you lose anyway. I mean, just e6. If you take f6, you can't stop the promotion. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There was a really intense game. A super intense game. Loads of tactics. And then a very instructive endgame, I would like to think. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see another game where I play the Mengarini Sicilian, which is the opening we had in this video, check out this video up here. I know you're going to enjoy it. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. There's got to be well over 100 by now, which is crazy. But anyway, you'll enjoy that if you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.